I'm still audible. I think there seems to be some problem. I'm not able to share. Are you still able to see my slides, Mataji?
Prabhuji, the first slide is visible. Bhagavad Gita Day 5-day course.
Yes, that's what actually I'm still sharing. I've not gone ahead
Okay.
beyond that. I'm going to actually
Yes.
start with that. Okay, so I just want to say a brief introduction about myself so that the people who are in the call can understand. Um, I'm by profession, I mean, by education, I have a master's in engineering and working in a MNC as a senior delivery manager. That's my personal life as such. Been practicing Krishna consciousness for the last 25 years now. This Bhagavad Gita is actually the basic stepping stone for understanding the value of life. So thank you so much for taking time and joining this. It's going to be a 1 hour course every day for 5 days. I'm hoping more, at least this will give you a beginning. Nobody can master Bhagavad Gita as such in just 5 days. But those of you who have taken Bhagavad Gita, bought Bhagavad Gita and want to actually read Bhagavad Gita, this will give you a stepping stone of what does really Bhagavad Gita contain. How does it actually help us? Why should we read Bhagavad Gita? We'll try to cover these aspects. While if you read the shloka by shloka, you may not get this view of Bhagavad Gita. But what I'm going to talk about is going to be a very, very high level, a kind of bird's eye view. The bird's actually on flying very top and we see something, it will be very small. So that view of the whole Bhagavad Gita is what I'm going to share today. Hopefully it'll be useful. Keep the questions posted on the chat window. I'll try to answer them after the session is done. And then probably we'll actually unmute and then people can ask their questions directly. Okay. With that, I want to actually pray to the spiritual masters because this session is mainly going to be taken from the commentary of Srila Prabhupada, who is the founder Acharya, Abhayacharya in the Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. He in the late 60s went to the US and then spread this message. Of course, he comes from the very, very prominent Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya. So he's a very bona fide teacher of Bhagavad Gita. It's not just a speculation of whatever is written. These are all facts. You'll start actually hearing all these things as you go along. So before actually we step into this session, I would like to pray to the spiritual masters to empower all of us, me, so that I can actually share the content properly, and all of you, so that you all can be focused and then can understand this Bhagavad Gita in a proper frame of mind. Okay. Om Ajnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sapitamena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnava Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakavitam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namosate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Shavanusate Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpatarubhascha Kripa Sindhubhya Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tamine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvite Shachunyavadi Pashyati Deshitarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay. As I said, today's agenda is going to be very, very simple. We'll actually try to hear a little bit of Bhagavad Gita by the facts. There are a lot of facts that you might have heard. Some of them might actually be speculation. Some of them are really the facts. So we'll try to actually look into those facts, not the entire thing, a little bit of them. Then we'll actually get into a very brief overview of the Bhagavad Gita. What does Bhagavad Gita, if somebody asks you, what does Bhagavad Gita really contain? And the normal understanding that we all have is that Krishna and Arjuna actually spoke about something, some metaphysics in the war field before a battle was started. And then Arjuna actually fought on Krishna's instruction. This is what we all know. What did they really speak? Okay, details are there, but what does it really mean? How do someone, if somebody asks who has no clue about what Bhagavad Gita is, asks you, what does Bhagavad Gita contain? We'll actually see in that perspective with the story. Then we will try to cover the first chapter, which is actually the setting the scene before the Kurukshetra war began. Arjuna and Krishna and the entire Kaurava and Pandava army were actually assembled in a place called Kurukshetra. And before that war began, Arjuna and Krishna were actually looking at the audience who is going to actually fight along with them. So we'll try to actually cover that aspect, and that's going to be for today. And then the remaining 4 sessions, I'm going to divide it into 3 or 4 chapters each, depending on how much we can cover. And based on that, we will try to actually cover all the 18 chapters, not by shloka, mostly by the essence or the content of it. Okay. Um, as I said, keep your questions, post it in the chat window whenever you get it. I'll try to answer them at the end, or we have the WhatsApp group. You can always answer them offline. Okay. So this is um, the Bhagavad Gita by facts. What I was actually thinking of sharing. Right? Bhagavad Gita really means Bhagavad means Bhagavan's Gita means song. So the song of Bhagavan or God is called the Bhagavad Gita, and this particular scripture has 700 shlokas divided into 18 chapters. Um, there are few speakers. Mostly it's between Arjuna and Krishna, but there is Sanjaya, there is Dhritarashtra also in the conversation. What happens in Bhagavad Gita, and whatever is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, all these are eternal facts. There are absolutely no speculation. Why? Um, because the Bhagavad Gita actually comes as a part of Mahabharata, and you all might know that Ganesh ji
Hare
was,
Krishna, Prabhuji. Sorry
yes,
to interrupt.
yeah.
Are you moving to the next slides? We are just able to see the first one only.
Uh, okay, looks like actually, are you able to see now?
Ha, now, yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, actually, I had covered this. I had actually covered the agenda slide,
Okay.
and then actually I moved on to the next slide. I'm here right now, the third slide, which is basically talking about the facts of Bhagavad Gita. I hope you're able to see this. Is that okay? Is it okay, Mataji? You able to see this?
Yes, Prabhuji.
I'm on the back by the facts slide.
Yes,
Okay.
by the facts.
Okay, so I'm trying to actually cover the second point, which is whatever is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita is all eternal truths. There are no speculations there. While the commentators might actually add some of their own points, but Bhagavad Gita shloka as such actually has no speculations as such. Now, Bhagavad Gita is part of the Mahabharata, and Mahabharata, you know that Ganesh ji actually wrote down everything when Vyasadeva was actually dictating. There was actually an agreement between Vyasadeva and Ganesh that Ganesh told Vyasadeva, you cannot stop um, reciting. When you stop reciting, then I'll actually stop writing. Vyasadeva agreed on one condition, that Ganeshji should not write anything unless until he himself actually confirms that whatever he's writing is correct. So in that sense, Bhagavad Gita is actually completely truthful. There are no speculation in it. So this is one thing we have to understand. The first person as per Bhagavad Gita who heard the whole scripture from God is actually Vivaswan, who is actually the Surya Dev. His name is Vivaswan. Way back, way back, when, how many years ago? It's mentioned 120,400,000 years ago. It's amazing. But then this actually mentioned, this particular information is there in the Bhagavad Gita itself in the 4th chapter. Um, where actually the parampara or the disciplic succession is actually explained, why Bhagavad Gita has to be learned from a disciplic succession and not with somebody who's very intellectual or someone who has no spiritual master or who considers God as spiritual master. These kind of people actually are rejected in the Bhagavad Gita. You need to actually hear Bhagavad Gita only from a disciplic succession. That's actually mentioned. And what does Bhagavad Gita really contain? In it just actually talks about the supreme secret of life, of our existence. Who are we? Where are we coming from? Who is God? Where are we actually situated? Why am I born in this family? And things like that. So these are actually the eternal fact that any intellectual human being wants to know. So this is actually mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. And then it is not a Hindu scripture. We have to understand it very, very clearly. This is actually Bhagavad Gita talks mainly about mankind, about the soul of every living entity, not anything to do with religion. This is actually a misnomer that people think that Bhagavad Gita is actually a Hindu scripture. It is not a Hindu scripture. That is something very, very important. Who can understand Bhagavad Gita? Only a devotee can understand Bhagavad Gita. Who is a devotee? A devotee is a person who actually has some kind of an affection towards Lord Krishna. Someone who actually accepts Lord Krishna as is. Whatever he speaks, he accepts it without actually adding his own intelligence. He just accepts it as is. Such a person who actually has that kind of affection and not envious of Krishna can only understand the Bhagavad Gita. Others cannot actually really comprehend this mystery, because the Bhagavad Gita talks about various things. It's very, very difficult for people who are not in the system of parampara to understand this. We'll see when you start reading the Bhagavad Gita, you will know it. We'll see a few instances if possible in this session, and then everyone should read at least little bit every day. Even if you read one shloka a day, this has 700 shlokas. It takes about roughly about 2 years. But even if you read one shloka every day, that will actually take you a long way. I mean, you will become more and more peaceful, more and more happy, and then you will feel that there's a value in life. And then you'll not be disappointed at even the most um, situations that actually are created. Most disappointing situations are created. You will never feel actually disappointed at all. Okay, so there are various other, in fact, Shankaracharya said in the Gita Mahatmya, Shankaracharya did mention that if at all you want to actually have one scripture, keep Bhagavad Gita as the only scripture across for mankind. Because this actually has a gist of everything, and it's called as Gita Upanishad. It's actually the cream of all the Vedic scriptures. It actually has the gist of all the information that's really required for mankind, right? Um, with that, I will actually get into the overview of the Bhagavad Gita with a story. Okay, so this is actually a story of a small boy who actually appeared, or who was born in a hut in some remote village. Was not actually born in a very high class family or anything, or very rich family. He was actually born in a very meager, normal family, like many of us, right? So we are born in a simple family. We have our own ups and downs in life. So he was born in that, and but he actually had a few facilities, and of course, um, he was a normal child with actually a good eyesight and things like that. So he was just playing around and things like that, and then every now and then he got into some kind of a problem, but he was getting trying to adjust with whatever the situation is there. Sometimes some children used to come and tease him, but he actually got used to it, and he also used to tease others, and then he was playing, and then he was growing from there. From day one, he was trying to adjust himself into this world. That was his actually focus. So life went on, and as he grew up, he started actually having more and more difficulties. His house was actually broken, and then there was always water dripping in one part of the house, and he was trying to correct that, and something else used to actually happen. Some other problem used to come, and there was so many problems which kept on coming. He was trying to fix one problem, he was getting another problem. He was trying to study properly, but then if he studies in one subject, other subjects was tough for him. It was going on. Life was so difficult. It was not simple, straightforward, it was not a cakewalk. It was actually really tough, and he was trying to learn and getting adjusted with a positive frame of mind. He was trying to understand all these things, what's happening around in the world. And as he went on, he started realizing that this problem is not going to get solved so easily. So he started getting adjusted to the problems in life. He got married, and then he had his own children. His parents were becoming old, and things were going on like this. But nevertheless, the problem never stopped. The problem kept on coming. He was juggling between these problems and trying to fix them. Now he started realizing, is somebody actually controlling me? Is something actually being pushed upon me? While I'm not actually creating these problems, I can actually live properly, but I sometimes something feel like somebody is pushing me. Maybe some people say it's my past karma, or it could be that somebody is actually trying to create that kind. Maybe God is actually trying to put me into this kind of a problem. So many speculations, so many things he started thinking. And he started coming to a conclusion that there is something beyond my control which is actually controlling me, which is actually doing something to me that I'm not able to really understand what's really happening. Because everything is okay, my father becomes sick. I'm just extending this example, like the house is broken. I'm trying to fix one portion of the house. Something else starts actually breaking up, and then I have to fix that. And when I fix that, this come again breaks up. So this keeps on going here and there. So he realized that it's not going to be so easy for him. He just went on with life, just like us. He was just continuing life as is. Now, one day he met actually a very enlightened person who was actually talking about a castle or a palace which was very close by to his village, which was very nicely constructed, and then it was so wonderful. And when he actually met this boy, he started explaining to him that actually there is a different castle which is actually very nearby. Why don't you move to that castle? Why are you trying to solve the problems which are there in this world, or in this house? Because this house that you're living is not your permanent house. The real house that you actually are supposed to live is actually the castle, that's beyond the village, right? He started explaining about where does this actually castle um, reside, and how can you actually go there. And he started giving all the different details about his particular castle, and this actually caught his attention. So he was actually asking the sage, let me know what else, how else can I actually go there, what else should I do there. And if you say that I don't have to fix this, will I be allowed to go to that castle? If that castle belongs to somebody, why will they allow me to go there? The sage was explaining everything one by one, that this particular castle belongs to a different dimension altogether, and you basically belong to that place. Unfortunately, you are staying here and trying to fix all this castle, all this hut, sorry. You're trying to fix the hut, and this is not actually your activity. You're supposed to actually look at how to go to the castle, right? So this exactly is the gist of Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita actually talks about a very, very simple concept. What does it talk about? It talks about two things. One, there's a material world where we all live. We can see each other. We can actually see people around us. So many people here existing with whatever facilities that we have. We see all these things. And there is also something called a spiritual world, which is actually completely anti-material, antimatter, and we are in between, stuck in between, right? While the spiritual world is directly controlled by God, the material world is actually controlled by an agent of God or the energy of God. They both are not the same. Now, the real goal of Bhagavad Gita is to actually impress upon us to move away from the material world to the spiritual world. Do whatever is necessary so that you can get out of this material world, because the material world is actually going to be a miserable place. It's not an easy thing. It keeps creating a lot of problem. Who creates all the problems? It's this material energy, symbolically represented as Durga Devi on the top picture, is the one who creates a lot of problem for all of us, because that's what we are destined for. As long as you're in the material world with the 10 arms which represent the 10 directions, there's going to be a lot of problems which will keep coming. The spiritual world is actually under the control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Supreme God. He's actually inviting us, come and stay with us, stay with me, because you belong here, you don't belong in the material world. So this is actually the gist of the whole Bhagavad Gita. There are various slokas, various chapters which talk about who are we, who is God, what is this world all about, what is time factor, how does time work in this world, what is karma. All these things actually are explained in a very what do you call, it's in a shloka format. Of course, the spiritual masters have added some commentary to it so that we can understand it and then correlate with this today's generation. um, but this is what it is. If somebody asks you what is in Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavad Gita really talks about two aspects, material world and spiritual world. The Supreme Lord is actually saying that you don't belong to the material world, you belong to the spiritual world. Please come back to me. That's all it is in the Bhagavad Gita. So the whole subjects which are actually explained in Bhagavad Gita are classified into 5 aspects. What are the 5 subjects? Ishvara, which is God, the Supreme Lord who controls everything and everyone, material nature, spiritual nature, us, all of us are controlled by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We'll get into a little bit of details about these things. I'll talk about what are the Ishvara and how does it all work, depending on how much time we have. The second aspect is Prakriti. Prakriti means nature, material nature, material nature, and the spiritual nature also. Um, who controls them? Why does the nature or the Prakriti actually controls us? Why? What is the reason that the material nature controls us so much? As I said, Durga Devi, who has 10 arms, controlling the 10 different directions, that is east, west, north, south, northeast, northwest, like that, and up and down. 10 directions are controlled. We are completely controlled at all points in time. You can never say, nobody can say that they're actually free to do anything. We are all acting as if we are forced, like a puppet. But we just don't realize it, that we are actually, we are thinking we are acting independently. We are not acting independently. You'll understand this in the Bhagavad Gita. Now, this Prakriti, nature means somebody actually owns the nature. Sometimes actually in the, if say for an example, a boy is actually playing and then he's actually always happy, no matter what difficult situation comes, he's happy. um, his mother would say that's his nature, he's been like that. That means a person's nature, it is not, nature is not independent. We have to understand it very clearly. Whatever we see in this world, be it actually the so-called coronavirus or some other virus which is actually attacking us, everything actually is happening as per the Supreme Lord's wishes. He decides what needs to be done. Material nature actually acts according to that. Why? The reasons are very different. But there are reasons which are mentioned. The gist of that is actually there in the Bhagavad Gita. If you understand the Bhagavad Gita properly, then you will not be disturbed in life at all. The third aspect, which is actually mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, is actually the jiva. Jiva means living entities. All of us, including the virus, including the animals, including the devatas, demigods like Ganesh ji, Kartikeya, all these personalities, Indra, Chandra, Agni, Vayu, all of them are all living entities. Um, there are gradations of living entities. We also are part of living entity class. However, we are actually going through a human experience right now. So this whole Bhagavad Gita talks about Jiva, the living entities, are created by the Supreme Lord and they are part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. That means we have the same quality like God, but in quantity, God is infinite and we are very finite or infinitesimal, very, very minute. Now, since we have the same quality like God, we also want to be like God. That is, we want to be independent. We want to actually have freedom. We want to enjoy whatever we say, whatever we survey, we think that actually it's mine. So this is actually the long conception that we have cultivated because nobody has trained us. We just come into this world and we pick up whatever we see is mine and things like that. That's the whole goal. But Bhagavad Gita says no, that's not the right understanding. If we try to be independent, material nature will condition us. If you understand that we need to surrender to the Supreme Lord and we are actually under the shelter of the Supreme Lord, material nature will not touch us. Material nature will not disturb us. Right. So these things actually explained in the Bhagavad Gita. Um, it's not that one chapter is for Ishvara, one chapter is for Prakriti, one chapter is for Jiva. No, it's all intermingled depending on the conversation that Arjuna is actually having with Krishna. Arjuna asks specific questions and Krishna responds back. And in the flow of the Bhagavad Gita, there are aspects wherein Krishna does explain that Jiva are eternal and they belong to the spiritual world because the spiritual world is always permanent and material world is created and annihilated time and again. It comes and stays for some time and then after some time it's destroyed on its own course. Again, it will be recreated. So this cycle goes on and on. So so this whole aspect of the living entity in the material world going through the cycle of birth and death, it's called samsara chakra. Of course, there are these all technical things, we'll not get into it, but when you read Bhagavad Gita, you'll hear all these words. The important aspect is to understand the gist of what it is and not technically be disturbed by why is it called like that and things like that. Now, Krishna also explains that the living entities, to go back to Godhead, to go back to the spiritual world, what do they have to do? It's called yoga. Yoga means connecting with the Supreme. The Jiva connecting with the Supreme is called yoga. What are those things? How does it work? Excuse me. How does it work? What kind of yoga is actually really useful? Um, Today's yoga is actually sitting postures. You sit and then meditate on something so-called whatever you want to meditate and do like that. That's actually not real yoga. It's just a aspect of Ashtanga Yoga, one step of Ashtanga Yoga, which is not recommended for this age. What is recommended for this age? The spiritual masters actually have given their suggestions, which will actually be very, very useful, which we'll hear in the later classes. But this is actually mentioned that Jiva are eternal, but going through the human experience, the human body has to actually be relinquished one point in time. You get another body. The Supreme Lord says, don't get another body, come back to me. You can actually be with me in your original form, eternally engaged in happy life of knowledge. You can actually be situated with me. So he actually explains these things. Most of this actually is about the Jiva and Ishvara. The Bhagavad Gita has the information about mainly these two aspects. Then there is actually Kala, which is time, because everything in the material world is actually time bound. Anything you see which is good today becomes stale tomorrow. The fresh apple actually can't be eaten after 2 weeks, it becomes stale. Similarly, so-called all of us who were beautiful in the early days become old, and you become old, nobody actually likes us, we are no longer attractive. Similarly, anything for that matter in the material world actually has um, a portion of time which they actually are fresh and beautiful, and as they progress older and older, um, they are no longer actually attractive. So everything actually is destroyed in due course of time. This is actually Kala, um, time, which destroys everything, and this time is nothing but an energy of the Supreme Lord. um, and Krishna actually mentioned that what are the different aspects of his existence, what does he do, how does he actually behave in the material world, how does he behave in the spiritual world, how are these material world created, why do certain people suffer, certain people don't suffer. All these things actually are mentioned depending on the conversation. And Kala actually um, controls everyone, um, because of um, again, one important aspect I forgot to tell is Kala conditions the living entities in the material world through a kind of what do you call period. But in the spiritual world, time is not there. That means when you actually enter a place happily, you remain happily there. Whereas here, say I'm a first ranker today, um, 3 years down the line, that doesn't matter actually, because that's no longer actually really valid. It's all, it's gone, it's past. There's no past, there's no future in the spiritual world. The spiritual world is always present. So that's the reason actually it's always very enjoyable, and the Supreme Lord calls us, please come back to me. That's actually aspect of Kala. And the last aspect is actually karma. While in these four, the Ishvara, which is Supreme God, Prakriti, which is the nature, Jiva, and Kala, they're all eternal. They're always existing. Karma, as such, is actually not ever existing. It's not eternal. It's actually temporary. Karma really means activities which are done in this world. um, it means that reactions, actions, when you perform an activity, you get a reaction for that activity. All these things come under the aspect of karma. So there are different kinds of karma which are actually explained, which is any karma. Karma really means any activity that you do um, as per the Vedic standards. There are vikarma, which is actually activities which are should not be done, forbidden activities, and there are activities which are done which doesn't give you a reaction, which is called akarma. All these things are actually mentioned. How do we overcome karma? If karma becomes zero, that means you don't suffer at all. You can actually decide what you want to do, as long as you actually have some past karma. It could be a good karma, which is called pious punya, or it could be bad karma, which is called pap, which actually creates some kind of bad reaction. Pap gives us distress, punya gives us happiness or pleasure. Again, these things actually are material. Now, when you actually have a lot of pap, you will actually have to suffer for the pap. You have to pay a price for that, and then you suffer either in the hellish planets or in a living body which is actually lower than human being. But if you actually have a lot of punya, you either go to the heavenly planets, swarga loka, wherein you actually enjoy a life which is very, 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 very long. Again, someday we have to die, even if you're actually a devata, even if you're actually you are Indra, Chandra, Vayu, or Ganesh. Someday you have to actually die. You have to leave that body and then take another body. So that change of body is called death. this change of body is actually explained in the Bhagavad Gita, and Krishna actually explains to Arjuna, because Arjuna is going to get into the war and he's going to be talking about life and death there, right? So these actually are the five subjects which are actually mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. It's spread across the Bhagavad Gita in 700 shlokas, and there are also a little bit of glorifications that Arjuna, Sanjaya, all these personalities actually talk about. They are very happy to hear that the Supreme Lord is explaining all these things to us. So they glorify him. The Lord also talks about himself a lot, so that we get a clear understanding of who the Supreme is. Because although many of us are Hindus, so-called followers of Hindu tradition, many of us are not even touched Bhagavad Gita. We only know Bhagavad Gita is there. That's actually really unfortunate, because our parents or our grandparents actually really have enforced these things. This has to be a very, very important aspect that we need to understand. I want to actually mention a story, then we'll actually get to the next step of our discussion. There was once a man who was actually trying to go to, he was going to the forest for collecting woods, right? So his business was to go to forest and then collect wood, come back, and then sell it in the village. Now, as he became older, he had his own children, but he did not take his children to the forest and showed them how to actually really cut woods and things like that. So when he became old, he had not trained the children to go to the forest, so he just left it. And then what really happened was, as we know, the forest path actually has a lot of grass and then plants and things like that. And if you don't walk on those path, the path actually gets covered by different creepers and then different plants. That's very difficult to actually go in there, that place. We get scared when you actually see a bush, thick bush. We don't know whether there's some insects there, so maybe some snakes or scorpions. We don't want to go there. So this is exactly what happened when the man died. um, his children thought, actually, what was my father actually really doing? I want to actually go and see. So when he wanted to actually go and see, when they actually tried to go to the forest, it was all covered with so much of thick bushes that they decided not to actually really go. They thought, okay, let me stay back in my home and then do something else. Now, um, this is our condition right now. Why I'm saying this story is, our forefathers somehow actually have not taught us the eternal truth about life, because of which today when we try to actually learn all these things, we get scared. We get so many questions that we really say, no, I don't think, actually, I want to go to the spiritual world. I'm happy here, even though actually it's so painful to be here. I don't mind being painful here, it's fine. So this is actually the biggest injustice our forefathers have done to us, because they have not given us the real truth. They have forgotten to actually inculcate the habit of what the Supreme Lord is actually conveying to us through the scriptures. So we should not do that. This is a responsibility of every parent, to understand what is the goal of life and pass that on to the next generation. It's a responsibility. This cannot be actually forgotten. Otherwise, we really actually are doing injustice to our next generation. Why? The environment, all these things are very important. Taking care of environment is very, very important. But we should understand the environment is actually controlled by Prakriti, and Prakriti is under the direct control of the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord within a moment actually can make the entire world, what you call, economical, or what you call, eco-friendly and everything, because he has that power. But we are just looking at the superior or superficial aspect of life, saying that I need to actually have an eco-friendly life, I need to have a healthy life, and these things, these are not very important. Because if you actually can take care of your devotion towards the Supreme Lord, these things will fall in place, because he is the supreme controller. He can control everyone, he can control all, he can even wipe off even the whole coronavirus if it's required, just by a glimpse. But he won't do that. Why? Because he wants all of us to actually understand the supreme truth. This is an opportunity for us to learn, right? So with that, I want to make sure that all of us, please, actually, if you don't have a copy of Bhagavad Gita, have a copy of Bhagavad Gita and then read them. You'll start understanding this, and we'll have more sessions. So with that, I'm going to get into this is the overview, right? So we'll actually get into the first chapter of it. What does it first chapter really talk about? Okay, I added this in the afternoon. Okay, so sometimes you'll say, okay, this is all nice. Can't we read this in the end of our life? Why should I actually read it right now? um yeah, many times actually people come and tell us, like, okay, I would actually rather become more like I'll practice devotion and all in the end of my life. Right now I have so much of work to do. I really don't have time. Unfortunately, we have created this society, all of us together. Uh, but who should read Bhagavad Gita? So this actually what I've seen in many WhatsApp forwards and things like that. I just want to touch upon a few points on that. Young should read because they are going to live in this world. How do you live in this world? How do you manage to be in the material world and not get disturbed by the material nature? Because Prakriti will create problems. He'll actually put all these different problems on us. So how do we actually stay in this world without getting disturbed by such problems, right? So for them, they should read this. Then for the working class, they should understand the art of work. I mean, even even I mean, working is very important because we have to keep ourselves, body and soul together. But how do you work? What is actually aspect of work? For them, it's very important. Again, for a housewife, peace is very important at home. So you get peace by if you understand the Bhagavad Gita properly. Um, um, Superficial understanding of Bhagavad Gita actually can create problems, but you should understand it along with the devotees. Then you'll be able to practice it properly at home. For the student, again, these are all the byproducts. As I said, they get a lot of concentration because they know what is the goal of life. So they'll be able to be focused on achieving whatever is necessary. For married people, relationship actually matters a lot. Without good relationship, there's no married life. So we can understand that why did God create men, women, all these things. So if you understand this in a proper perspective, then you can really actually have a good relationship. For a leader, the most important aspect is that they should actually be selfless, because if a leader, being the first person to be informed about what's happening in the world, starts using those information for his personal benefit, then the followers will lose trust in him. So a leader must be selfless. It's very important. So one learns how to be selfless, how to be dedicated um, in life, in whatever they actually pick up, right? So that's very important. Again, for people who are stressed, which is actually the situation in today's world, especially for those who are working in the software industry. Of course, other industry also is equally bad, but they need some peace of mind, and they don't get peace of mind. They can't sleep peacefully in the night, so they take to different artificial ways of actually becoming happy. So for them, the Bhagavad Gita will actually give them so much of peacefulness that you don't feel like actually looking for anything else outside. Again, this is just what I've seen, that for someone who is actually sinful, who's done some sinful activity in the past, um, somebody who has actually cheated their spouse or whatever it is, they feel very guilty. Like, how do I overcome this? Especially pious people will start thinking, because of situation, something might have happened. They'll actually feel very bad, and then they keep repenting. For such people, how do they actually overcome that guilt? So Bhagavad Gita does actually give them a glimpse of this information. Again, someone who's addicted, they want to get over the addiction, but they're unable to get over addiction. Bhagavad Gita can really give us, um, because Bhagavad Gita will make you completely free. It's going to actually make us completely free from the control of material nature, right? These all controlled or conditioned by the material nature on us, right? So we can actually overcome that. Again, for someone who really says, I don't want anything in this life, I want to get liberated. Okay, what is liberation? All those things again mentioned in Bhagavad Gita. We'll understand that. And again, for the old people who feel like, okay, if I had made my life in a different format, probably I would have enjoyed life better. Or some people feel like, okay, my life is done. I no longer actually have time to enjoy life and things like that. For such people, they need hope for them to actually continue. Again, material body will go one day, but when you cultivate the spiritual nature, automatically you will feel youthful even if you're old. Right? Those These are some claims. You will have more like this. I have seen WhatsApp messages coming. I just picked up a few on this. Specifically, if you have any questions, you can answer at the end of the session. Okay. So now, setting the scene. We all know that Bhagavad Gita was actually a conversation between Arjuna and Krishna in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. It was actually a terrible battle which was fought over 18 days, about 5,000 years back. Now, what really happened there? What was the reason that Krishna spoke to Arjuna and the Bhagavad Gita? This actually is setting the scene. This is actually the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita. In the when both the parties were assembled in the Kurukshetra war, Arjuna suddenly actually asked Krishna, um, saying that, okay, can you actually take me to the center of the war field? In fact, before even they started this, Arjuna actually blew his conch, saying that I'm ready for the war. That's how they actually, in the olden days, they actually had their own conch shells and they used to blow the conch. And when you blow the conch, then it's actually a indication that I'm ready for the war. So all the parties actually really blew their own conch shells. Yudhishthira, the Pandavas had their own conch shell. Krishna blew his conch. What do you call Dronacharya, Bhishma, Duryodhana, all of them actually blew their conch shells. All of them were ready for the war. And suddenly, Krishna told Arjuna, look, who is all actually there? All your whole family members are here to fight. Arjuna actually got a little bit confused, like, what am I trying to do here? He asked Krishna, can you actually take me to the center of the battlefield? I just want to see both the parties who's actually assembled here to fight with us, Krishna. So Krishna said, okay, I'll take you. So he was actually, all of them are actually looking around what is happening here. And Arjuna suddenly actually put his bow and arrow down, and then he was sitting and then watching, and he saw Bhishma there, Dronacharya there, Duryodhana, all his brothers, cousin brothers were there. So many people who actually had played with in his early part of life, they were all there, and he became very very confused. What's really happening here? Is it so many people actually have left their home and come here to fight with each other, and all of them actually having that a kind of a very vengeful mindset that they want to actually kill each other. So they were actually very 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 confused. No, sorry, they were not confused, he was confused, looking at all these things. Okay, what am I supposed to really do here? Am I supposed to fight here? If I really fight, all these people will die, and if they don't die, I will die. Is it really required? So he's actually looking at all these things, and then all these things were actually broadcasted, or Sanjaya, who was actually a disciple of Vyasadeva and also the chariot driver of Dhritarashtra, by the mercy of Vyasadeva, because Vyasadeva blessed Sanjaya that although you are actually going to be with Dhritarashtra, who is the king, you can see what's happening in the battlefield by my blessing. So you can actually focus. Okay, what is Arjuna doing? Then you'll see what is Arjuna, what Arjuna is actually doing at this point in time. So then he can relate everything to Dhritarashtra, because Dhritarashtra is a king, blind king, and he was trying to understand what is happening in the war field, right? So Sanjay was informing everything, and this was all going on. That's recorded. Now, when Arjuna actually saw all these things, he became actually really confused. Why did he become confused? He went into a kind of a difficult situation, because he understood who are all there in the war field, what are their total strengths, what is Bhima's strength, what is Duryodhana's strength, what is Bhishma's strengths, what is Dronacharya good at, who has what curses. He knew all these things. Arjuna really knew, not an ordinary person. He was a king and a very very powerful. In the Mahabharata, it mentioned that he was called as a Maharathi. Maharathi means someone who can fight in 10 directions, all the directions at one person can fight at the same time. If you have 10 different personalities attacking him from 10 different directions, he can comfortably actually defeat all of them. So such a person is a Maharathi, and Arjuna was one of them. So he was not actually um, confused about his ability to fight. He was confused about what is really happening here, and he became very morose. And he started actually telling Krishna that I'm finding it very difficult to understand the situation here. Why are we actually going to fight first of all? Is it really required? Can I actually just drop everything? um, can I really go and then beg somewhere instead of actually fighting this war? Why? Because I'm actually seeing this, that there is Bhishma here, or Drona here. Bhishma is my grandfather. I'm supposed to show affection towards him. So how will I actually fight and kill that person? So I cannot actually do this, Krishna. It's very difficult for me. And then he saw Dronacharya. Dronacharya is supposed to show respect, because he's the guru. He taught him everything. And now I'm supposed to actually show him disrespect by killing him or fighting with such a person. And here actually I'm not going to fight just like a friend. It's going to be life. It's going to be death. So he started getting into an identity crisis. I'm supposed to show a particular kind of affection because of my relationship, but I'm supposed to do something else. So he was totally confused, scared, and he told Krishna, this is actually a kind of situation I don't want to be in. This seems to be very 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 dangerous for me. It seems to be very difficult, and he started actually giving different reasons why he doesn't want to fight. He started telling, right? Krishna, if I fight this war, I have to actually kill these personalities. I have to see so many people, so many men who have come here in the war field. Um, and they are not ordinary people. They are all actually having their families. They are either somebody's father, somebody's husband, or somebody's son. If these people are all killed, the women folk will actually be unprotected, and some people might actually take that as a what do you call some miscreants, some mischievous people can take that as freedom, and then pollute the women folk and the families, and then the future generation, all of them will be actually he calls something called Varna Sankara, or waste population, hippie population, who have no clue about what goal of life is, and then they'll just live for the sake of plundering others and then cheating others, and all these bad qualities will come because there won't be anyone to train them. And then people will say, Arjuna killed my grandfather, that is why I'm in this condition as a beggar. So I can't take this. So he started giving many reasons like this, that the future generation will actually suffer if I kill all these people. Krishna, I cannot do this. And Krishna was just smiling and laughing, or not laughing, he was smiling at Arjuna, like, Arjuna, you are actually seems to be very qualified, but these reasons doesn't make sense, because you're a kshatriya, you're supposed to fight, and then you're actually coming and giving me reasons here in the battlefield. So far actually you're all okay. When we are discussing these things in the palace, you actually did not really take it seriously. Now you're coming to the war field and giving me all these reasons. It doesn't look like a learned person would do, really. um, right, so you're actually smiling like that, and Arjuna actually was not actually mentally speculating everything. He was really using every facts, his training and things like that. Um, he did even mention that if your spiritual master, or if your grandfather Ugrasena were to come and stand here, will you shoot an arrow at him? Um, Krishna, tell me. I mean, if you actually had got Sandipani Muni, whom you actually loved so much, was coming here and then going to fight with you think actually you will shoot the arrows at them? You are telling all these things that you can do, and you can actually you are asking me to actually fight with all these people. Would you do that? Would you actually kill your own family? My whole family will be destroyed if I actually get into this war. I mean, all of them will be killed. What is the use of actually having all this different kingdom, wealth? Who will I show this with? Who will I show? I mean, in fact, it's a fact. If you actually have a lot of wealth, throw a party, you show everyone in your family and then friends, saying that, look, I have this, I bought this, and things like that, right? But if you don't have anyone to show all the wealth, what is the point in having so much of wealth, right? So that was his logic. Arjuna was actually trying to put all different. There are many reasons. There are about 5, 6 reasons that Arjuna actually points out one by one, which is there in the Bhagavad Gita. In the first chapter, explains all these things, and then he says, finally he starts crying. He tries to hold his gandiva, which is actually very powerful bow. It slips from his hands. He's no longer, his hands actually become very sweaty. His hands are becoming sweaty, his body is becoming very sweaty. There is actually a very important thing the spiritual masters actually mention in one of the purports, an amazing thing that we should understand. Whenever you actually are having a kind of a very affectionate, very nostalgic moment. You feel like crying. You can actually have tears, and then your hair will stand on end. Sometimes you actually see something which is very touching. You feel like actually very emotionally disturbed, very nice. You feel, and the hair stands on end. Other aspect of the same situation is when you are in horror, when you are in a kind of a very dangerous situation. Still, the hair will stand on end. All the hairs will actually stand on end, and you feel like crying. You actually cry in such kind of situation. Arjuna was going through the second thing. He was actually very terrified to see the entire population going to be wiped out, and so many things will actually. He started thinking about the future of everything. He was not only looking at the present. He was actually having that kingly qualities, that he was not simply doing, okay, because I like it, I will do it. No, he was actually thinking from a shastric perspective, from a practical standpoint. What are the situations which actually come in? How will we handle the future generation and things like that? So it was so much calculative. And then he spoke all these things to Krishna, and then the first chapter actually ends like that, saying that I'm going to drop my. He drops because his hands are sweaty. He's not able to hold the gandiva. It actually keeps slipping down. He's crying like anything, and all the personalities like, okay, Bhishma, Drona, Yudhishthira Maharaj, all of them actually looking at him and saying, what is happening to them? What are these two people doing in the center of the war field? And why is Arjuna crying? I'm not able to really understand what is happening. And when Sanjay actually relates this to Dhritarashtra, Dhritarashtra actually is becoming happy because he knows that if Arjuna and Krishna actually starts fighting, especially Arjuna fights under Krishna's directions, the Kauravas have no chance of winning the war. So he's hearing all these things, and then he's becoming excited. But Krishna just smiles, and Sanjaya relates to Dhritarashtra, saying that Krishna knows everything, and then it's basically Krishna who's put Arjuna into this kind of condition. Why? Because he has to give the Bhagavad Gita to all of us. Because the Bhagavad Gita is an eternal science, as I actually called out in the beginning of the class, that this particular science was actually given to Sun God first, so that Sun God, being one of the ruler of the planetary systems, can understand how to rule the planets properly. Now, the material world, one aspect is that anything you set, it will actually deteriorate after some time. So one has to actually reset everything again and again. So same thing happened, and Krishna says in the fourth chapter that I see that the knowledge actually is deteriorating so much that I need to re-establish the real truth again. So I'm choosing you, Arjuna. So we'll see this in the fourth chapter. I don't want to jump the gun. But at this point in time, in the first chapter, Krishna just smiles and Arjuna decides, okay, I'm not going to fight. I'm no longer able to hold the Gandiva. Neither I'm able to actually see this army, vast army. I'm sweating so much. Basically, he's perspiring and he's crying like anything. His hair's on. Actually, the hair is actually a kind of mechanism through which the body heat is controlled. When I mean, they say that actually the anatomically they say that when the hair is actually fully straight, that means it actually can expose the skin so much that the heat can be removed. But if the hair closes down, then it'll become more and more warm. So you don't need so much of air to actually touch the skin. So something like that. So this is what is happening. His body becomes so hot. Then he's saying like, I can't do this. Krishna, I simply cannot do this. And then he drops the what do you call the Gandiva. He sits down and starts crying there in the center of the war field. Arjuna, and does that. Krishna looks at him and smiles. The second chapter actually really begins with that. um, Krishna starts actually chastising Arjuna, saying that what you have done is actually not the right thing, because you're supposed to be learned person actually does not behave like this, because you know the truth of life, so why are you actually doing like this? And Arjuna responds back to him saying that I understand that, but if you are there, if you are spiritual masters, your family was there, would you fight Krishna? I can't understand this. And then finally, actually, so far they both are friends, right? Krishna and Arjuna. Arjuna surrenders to Krishna, saying that I have miserly weakness. I'm not able to actually decide anything. Even in our life, actually, we go through so much of difficulty. Sometimes we don't know what decision to take. Somebody can somebody decide something for me? Can I pass on the decision making to somebody else? Then I'll feel more happy, more free in my thoughts and things like that. But unfortunately, we don't get that kind of situation, or not situation, that kind of person who can actually decide something for us. We have to decide things, we have to live according to those decisions. Sometimes we make mistakes. So Arjuna was worried, he was in that kind of condition, and he had Krishna to help him out. We'll see from the second chapter onwards what is that actually Krishna did, because Arjuna was a warrior in before the Bhagavad Gita, right? The whole Mahabharata war. And after the Bhagavad Gita was spoken, he continued to fight. Basically, he was fighting. He was a Kshatriya. He started fighting. So, what really transformed? What really happened in the whole conversation? That we'll see as we go along in the next four sessions. But this is what actually happens, and then with that, um, what Krishna simply Arjuna simply decides, I'm not going to fight, and he stops, saying that it's better to become a beggar and then beg instead of getting into this war and killing so many people. And then I don't want to take the karma of all these people. I don't know. It's just like when you actually are removing all the weeds. You want to clean a garden, say you are removing the weeds. Sometimes actually you have to remove the grass also, right? So grass is actually not, it's harmless, it's very good, but you remove it because it's with the weed. So Arjuna was feeling like that. So if I have to kill all these people, I don't know. There are many nice people in this war. If unnecessarily, I should not kill all these people. I don't want to actually take the bad reactions of killing someone who is actually really not to be killed. So I don't want to do that. Krishna, please forgive me. I can't fight this war. I mean, I'm done. Right? I'm done with this. I don't want. I'll better actually rather become a beggar and go and then live a life of begging rather than seeing all these things being done. I don't want the kingdom. And he starts shutting down, saying that I can't do this. That's actually the first chapter. You'll find some more details to this. Basically, who is actually assembled, who blew what conch shell, what is the name of the conch shell, and all these things. But then, just this is what actually is mentioned in the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, which is just setting the scene of this of the whole Bhagavad Gita 18 chapter. Yeah. So the second day, the next day content, I just want to mention that, and then we will actually open up for questions. We're going to talk about three different aspects. One is actually the contents of the whole Bhagavad Gita summarized format. It'll actually, the second chapter is talking about the entire Bhagavad Gita, but in a condensed format. And then the remaining 16 chapters, Krishna explains all those things in detail. Then what are the different yoga systems? Because the jiva and, as I said, the jiva and God actually are tightly related. How do we actually go back to that place from where I came from? That's yoga. And what are the different levels of yoga? And Krishna talks about the bhakti yoga as the topmost of all because it's easy for everyone to follow, but it also gives you the highest level of perfection compared to all the other yoga systems. So he does mention that. So we will actually try to cover these things, which actually come up to six chapter, I think. Second, third, fourth, five, six. We'll try to cover up to six chapter in the next session tomorrow. Meanwhile, I my humble request is, if you don't have a copy of Bhagavad Gita, please have a copy of Bhagavad Gita, because that's actually the base. And it's not like a newspaper that you can buy and throw it. It will stay, and even after we pass away, it will come to use for the next generation. Nobody throws his Bhagavad Gita because it's worshipable. We all know it. So if you don't have one copy, please have a copy of Bhagavad Gita as it is. You can check with Ashwini Mataji. She can actually send it to you. um, with that, I would actually want to stop here. I hope actually I'm within time. Okay. I will be here available for questions. So let us actually see. Make sure that you attend these five sessions. That's one, today's one, the remaining four sessions also, because you will understand the overall view of what is there in Bhagavad Gita, and then what is relevant for all of us to actually pick up. That will actually take us a long way, right? uh, with that, I'll try to actually check on the questions which are come. Let me see. Okay, so um, I hear a question from Ashok. Prabhuji, from when Sanjaya could see the war? I heard from small class that it is from 10th day, like a recap. Is that right? And second question, who recorded while they were watching? Okay, so in the 18th chapter, in the end, actually this whole thing is actually mentioned, because if you see the 18th chapter, 74th to 75th verse, Sanjay actually mentions, by the mercy of Vyasadev, I was able to witness the entire thing. Different commentators talk about different things, um, that it was actually mentioned from the 10th chapter. Some people say from 12th chapter. Some people say only the important aspect of Bhagavad Gita was told by Sanjaya. Actually speaking, the Mahabharata, what I read, Sanjay actually sees much more than this. What is there in Bhagavad Gita? Actually, Bhagavad Gita is only the main portion, right? After that, the 18-day war is still there. Sanjay was able to see everything completely end to end. The entire thing was actually written by, although Krishna actually spoke this to Arjuna, Vyasadeva actually spoke the same thing to Ganeshji, and Ganeshji actually wrote it down. So whatever is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, that's how it is actually mentioned. See, we should understand one thing very clearly. Sometimes what really happens is the war will be done before the war itself. Actually, the scripture will be written. These are like very very mystical for our conditioned mind to understand. How does it work? Just like if you see in the Ramayana, you'll find that Ramayana was actually written by Valmiki. So Valmiki was a hunter, right? And by Narada Rishi's mercy, he became a devotee by chanting the Rama mantra, that is Mara, Rama, Rama, like that. He was actually chanting. Mara really means killing. Narada Rishi told him, you chant Rama's name. So he couldn't chant. So he said, okay, chant Mara, which is your profession. he started doing that, and he became purified by chanting the Rama mantra. And he wrote the Valmiki Ramayana. Basically, he wrote the Ramayana, and after that, Ramayana took place. So this is very, very amazing to us. Like, how can he actually write somebody write something, and the Supreme Lord comes and does some activity based on what is written there? It's very difficult for us to understand, but we should get it clearly. These are all actually not concoction. These are all actually happening facts. Sanjay could actually see everything, including the war, Bhagavad Gita, everything for that matter, end to end. Hope that helps. Actually, you'll see these are very mystical information in the Shastras. That is why many people actually get bogged down by something which is very superficial. Just like people actually talk about this whole. If you see Pandavas and Kauravas, um, their fathers like Pandu, Dhritarashtra, Vidura, all these personalities, however they're born. Okay, um, so you'll find all these things very difficult to understand, um, but with the guidance of the acharyas, with the spiritual masters, we can easily understand them.
You're on mute.
Yeah, yeah.
Prabhuji, you are not audible.
Sorry. Actually, I mean, I don't know how I got muted. So the question is, Prabhuji, where can we get a copy of Bhagavad Gita as it is? Ashwini Mataji can help you. Hope you are there in the WhatsApp group. You can just ask for, can I get a copy of Bhagavad Gita? Then actually they will talk to you and then give you that. So I think it's around 200 rupees or something. But I'm telling you, this is actually the best investment that we can ever do for ourselves is actually have a copy of this Gita. Um, because at the most difficult situations in life, I mean, this will actually give us a light. It'll actually give us the guidance on what really needs to be done. Just like Arjuna actually was completely confused in life on what he needs to do. He had the knowledge, he knew everything, what is right, what is wrong, but he was not able to take a decision, and he wanted somebody to guide him. And we'll see that in the second chapter. Krishna actually guided him. So that's our mentality. You'll start understanding these things. So many questions will be there. Okay, who is the supreme? If the supreme God is one, why have so many other personalities like, okay, Shiva, Vishnu, Krishna? Why so many? All these things actually Krishna explains. He gives the explanation in the Bhagavad Gita in the 11th chapter. And interestingly speaking, the spiritual masters actually explain it in a way that we can understand. That's why it's called Bhagavad Gita as it is. Bhagavad Gita as it is really means whatever happened to Arjuna, it will happen to us. We'll be able to conclude the right conclusion and behave in the right aspect. Um, After hearing the whole Bhagavad Gita, what did Arjuna say? He says, Nashto moha smriti labdha. I've now overcome all my confusions. Now I'm fully focused on what needs to be done in life. Now Karishya Vachanam Tava. Order me, my Lord, what I should do now. I will do it. So that was his mood. And that's the same kind of situation we also will come in if you read the Bhagavad Gita as it is, right? Um, yeah. Any questions? Anybody wants to actually ask any questions? I don't see any more questions on the chat window. If anybody has questions, please unmute yourself and you can ask the question. No questions. Was it actually useful?
Yeah, it is very much useful.
Okay. So there was a question from Pranita Mataji saying that why Bhagavad Gita as it is only?
प्रणितन प्रश्न विचारलाय.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So why only Bhagavad Gita as it is only? Yeah, sure. I'm trying to answer this question because the question was asked by a friend of hers. Why Bhagavad Gita as it is only? Because see, Bhagavad Gita is after all shlokas, right? It's written in Sanskrit. When without context, you can take one shloka and mean something else because Sanskrit shlokas are easy to interpret in different ways, just like any language, right? So we can always interpret it in a way. But if you interpret in your own way, it will be Bhagavad Gita as you want it. Uh, the most important aspect is not the direct shlokas itself. The most important aspect is actually the translation and the purport. Because without the purport, you will not actually come to real conclusion. Just like if I'm writing a book, I know why I've written the book. And whatever explanation actually I give, that'll be the best explanation. If I write the book and somebody else reads the book, and then I don't explain it to them why I've written the book, then they will misinterpret it. They will actually give some other opinion about that book. So there is high chance that you will not come to the real conclusion of what Bhagavad Gita is meant for. Just like I gave the example about this particular this example, right? I just want to show that example. This is actually the real example. This is actually the only picture you should actually have when you actually see the Bhagavad Gita. That's all it is. But how many people will actually come to this conclusion? They'll actually get bogged down by different things. Okay, they'll start fighting about who God is and things like that. But that's actually not the real thing to do. So the Bhagavad Gita as it is, because you should come to the real conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna actually has spoken the Bhagavad Gita to his disciples, like Lord Shiva, Narada, or Brahma. Right? Brahma gave this knowledge to Narada, Narada to Vyasadev. Right? Vyasadev wrote it along with Ganesh ji. So it's coming in a disciplic succession. So when I actually when I write the book and I actually train the people in my class, and my class people can actually train their class students, that's actually the disciplic succession. And that will actually really give the right understanding. But if somebody else hears something from a book what I've written and they don't really get what it is, right? Then then it'll all be misinterpreted. There's a nice story that I actually heard some time back. One of the spiritual masters actually told me an interesting one. Once there was a rishi, a sage. He actually had told his disciples, all of them, saying that, okay, I'm going to meditate in Himalayas for 10 years. So till that time, I want you people to follow something very strictly. So he called his chief disciple and told him, write on what I'm going to give, just follow all these things carefully. So this person was actually explaining everything. He wrote down everything and then took it back to the rest of the disciples, right? So the sage went to Himalayas. After 10 years, he came. When he came, actually he saw what is happening here. There were actually a lot of festival happening in the ashram. He was actually confused what is happening. He called all of them, the boys and girls were enjoying, dancing, everything and things like that. He called the chief disciple and say, come here. What did I actually tell you? Um, I gave you some instruction that you need to follow it until I come back. And you people actually are doing something here which I don't understand. This is the instruction I gave. And this man, this chief disciple actually said, yeah, you told me something, I actually wrote down and then I gave it to all of them. So they were all very happy following all these things. This is what he told. He told, what did you write down? Said, actually, he had written celebrate. Okay. But the spiritual master had told him celibate, right? There's just one single letter different. It's celibate and celebrate, right? The spiritual master had told all of them to follow celibacy. Be strict in celibacy. Then when I come, you'll be able to understand what I'm talking about. But this fellow actually wrote it down as celebrate. And then when I actually went to all the other disciples, they actually celebrated heavily and thought like this is what our spiritual master wants us to do. So this all can happen if you don't actually hear it in the proper perspective from the spiritual master in the sampradaya. If you don't actually get it from disciplic succession, you can come completely different track altogether. That's the reason we need to actually read the Bhagavad Gita as it is, because it's coming in the parampara. You can see that I think in the just before the first chapter in the Bhagavad Gita, you'll find the disciplic succession mentioned coming from Krishna himself. So of course these personalities are not what do you call, some names which are put, but these personalities have history, and then they actually have the past tense of these personalities, where they lived, what did they do, and things like that. And end of the day, you will get the same effect as what happened. There are so many Bhagavad Gita versions. How many people actually really come to this conclusion of what I'm showing? Hardly anybody has come to this conclusion. This is actually the Sampradaya information. This is coming from the disciplic succession. Then you'll be able to actually come to a conclusion, say, I need to do this properly. Yeah, that's the reason. Okay, so if somebody wants to leave, can definitely leave. I'm going to actually answer questions. Make sure that you hear if you're not able to attend. But end of the day, if we don't actually take this information, nothing is going to actually break apart. Just that we'll actually get another life like this after death, and again you get another different kind of body, and you'll be conditioned again. Life after life, you'll actually have to stay here, but the Supreme Lord is telling, come back to me. That's the only advantage that we have, because this cannot be understood by animals, what I'm talking about. Only those human beings who are little intellectual can understand this information. Yeah. Okay. Why did God created the material world? That's the next question which has come. I'll try to answer that. Okay, God created the material world basically because some point in time, some of the living entities, not all of them, some of the living entities decided that why should God only be the head of everything? Why can't I be like God? So God creates a material world and say you go and then do whatever you want there in a place which looks like spiritual world, but everything is conditioned there. Eternally, you cannot be God. But one some portion in our life, we feel like I am really like God in what I do. I'm actually the center of everything. So that kind of mentality comes. So it gives us a glimpse. Again, for people to enjoy their desires independent of God, material world is actually created. It's like a prison house. Durg means it's a prison fort, and Durga is the warden of that particular Durg. That's why Durga Devi is actually the owner of this material world who controls everything. Yeah. So if specifically you have any questions, you can always ask me. I mean, I'll try to answer them. Um, Sanjay was blessed by Sri Krishna to see and tell this to Dhritarashtra, but wanted to understand what was the reason. Yeah, there are various versions. You see, in the Bhagavad Gita itself, it's mentioned Sanjaya by the grace of Vyasadev, he was able to see it. This is because Dhritarashtra did ask Krishna, saying that I want to see the war, but I can't come and fight because I'm blind. I can't actually come there, but I want to see what is happening. He was in so much of tension that what is happening. Again, there's a long story to this because Dhritarashtra he was a hunter in his previous life somewhere, and he had to actually go through the bad reaction of seeing each one of his son destroyed or killed. That was his karma, and he was very restless that he wanted to actually know what is happening in the war. So Krishna said, okay, you'll be able to see it from wherever you are. You'll be able to hear and then hear from Sanjaya. And then Dhritarashtra suffered immensely because of each son being killed, because he did that in the past, right? So for that reason, he was getting the reaction for that. One question. Most of our practical life is filled with so many helpful do's and don'ts and self-help tips to live a purposeful life free of dilemmas. May I request you to synchronize your discourses with some real life analogies? Okay, sure. As we go along, we'll actually start seeing some more analogies. Again, so this is specifically for understanding the Bhagavad Gita. Practical tips will follow these things, because you need to actually see somebody else following these things in life. Because what Arjuna did, what Krishna did, I can't do it. What Draupadi did, I can't do all those things and all. So how do I practically live in this world? How do I manage to balance my life, office, work, everything, my children, everything? How do I manage all these things? You need to actually attend those sessions. Then you'll start actually understanding them. I will try to actually give some practical tips on this as we go along, but 4 hours or 5 hours is way too less for understanding these things, because we spend so much, 30 years, 25 years, 20 years we have spent on things which are nothing to do with this. Now suddenly we want to actually turn our focus on something else completely different. It's a little tough. Anybody who actually talks about this world do's and don'ts are all in the material world. Spiritual world aspect is only one: devotion to the Supreme Lord. That's all it is. And that's how with chanting the holy name. We'll understand this as we go along in the next sessions. Okay, so there's one more question which has come up. Can you share the slides? I'd like to share it with Ashwini Mataji. She can post it. Why Lord Krishna, who was close to Arjuna, why not other Pandavas? There are reasons to this. The main reason is that Arjuna is the eternal associate of Krishna. In the Mahabharata, in different situations, it's mentioned that Arjuna and Krishna were not ordinary personalities. They are Narayana Rishi. They both are always together. Nara Rishi and Narayana Rishi. Narayana is Krishna, Nara is Arjuna. They're always together. Arjuna and Krishna is never separated. They're eternally together like that. And since Arjuna is extremely friendly and also of the same age like Krishna, because Yudhishthira and Bhima are elder to Krishna, so they maintain respect. And then Nakula and Sahadeva was a little junior to Krishna. That's why actually you can't be on same level. And Krishna and Arjuna are very close to each other because they both are of the same age and they like each other so much. And that's the reason actually Krishna chose Arjuna to actually reveal this information. You will hear this directly in the 4th chapter. So don't just depend on my lecture. Read the Bhagavad Gita as it is. One shloka a day you read. You will start understanding all these things, what I'm actually talking about. It may take some time, but it's actually worth it because it's eternal information. Okay. There is another question which is coming. Secondly, you said, Prabhuji, that one chapter tell you the reason for our existence. Can you please highlight that that explain this? Okay, about our existence, what is there? Okay, so this is not just one chapter. It's actually across various chapters. You will find that some portion of that is actually mentioned in the 4th chapter. Some portion of it is mentioned in the 7th chapter. In fact, mame vamsha jiva lokhe jiva bhuta sanatana manashashtani indriyani prakriti sthani karshati. That actually is the real information which is given by Krishna, which actually talks about the living entities are eternally my parts and parcels. They are actually coming from me, but unfortunately they are struggling with the 6 senses, which include the mind. That is 5 senses and the mind together. They are struggling here. So he mentions that if you read the purport of that, you'll get more information on what it is. Across the Bhagavad Gita, you'll start actually understanding slowly. Don't jump. There are a lot of things which are there in the Bhagavad Gita across these 5 topics. One day you may not be able to understand everything, but you will understand these things one by one, right? Bhagavad Gita is just not about our karma. Bhagavad Gita talks about karma also, and Ishvara, Prakriti, Jiva, Kala. In general, Krishna, what he tries to communicate to us is that by default, we are going to rot in this material world. Just like when you are hungry, your stomach growls, your sleepy eyes actually creates a kind of problem. Your mind is, but there's nothing which actually tells us that you have to worship God right now. By default, it doesn't. Material world, there's no way that something tells you that you have to worship God. No. Association matters. If you actually are used to that kind of association, when I'm in difficulty, I remember God, I see somebody else doing that, I also do that. So it comes by seeing it. It's not a what do you call a instinct. It's not an instinct that we have to worship God at all. It doesn't come. Karma again is temporary. Karma really means activities, right? Fate and destiny. It's actually a very complicated subject matter. Krishna explains this in the 3rd chapter about it's very difficult to understand it. Even the most intelligent people cannot understand how this is actually working. But Krishna just gives a glimpse of it. But Krishna tells, don't do all these things, surrender unto me. Again tells Arjuna, don't try to control this world. You cannot, because material nature is extremely powerful. Get over it, surrender unto me. The material nature will not touch you. That's actually is what he's telling time and again. And he actually tells Arjuna, surrender unto me. He doesn't say surrender unto anybody. These things you'll start understanding the 18th chapter. Yeah. Yeah, so there's one more thing which is coming, saying thanks for the answer, Prabhuji. I agree with you that material and spiritual worlds differ, and hence chanting the whole holy name is the only way to be in spiritual world. But most humbly, my submission is that I thrive for reaching a synchronization of the 2 worlds, so that spirituality aids me in leading my life with content and without agonies. Thanks. Yeah, definitely. The point is understand this very simple. Why are we actually having difficulty? Srila Prabhupada, who's actually written this book, gives a very nice example in Bhagavatam. He says, when the child doesn't listen to the father, then mother beats him. Of course, I'm talking about some 10 years old examples. These days, if you do, they will actually take a gun and shoot. Or these days, consider as actually children cannot be hit at all. The olden days, actually, maybe about 20, 30 years that was there. If the child doesn't listen to the father, especially the son doesn't listen to the father, the mother actually has to correct the child. It's very important. Similarly, the Supreme Lord is actually our real father, and if the real father is telling us to do something and we don't do that, material nature will definitely actually torture us for sure. So if we simply actually accept the Supreme Lord and surrender unto Him, material nature will not touch us. There is a question of getting agony. You will not get anything. You will not even have a problem with this material world. Material world will create problem only when you don't surrender to the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, there's absolutely no point in actually talking about the material world. There's no material problems at all. Material problems exist when there's no spirituality. When I say spirituality, not some yoga and things like that. Plain surrender unto the Supreme Lord and His instructions. That's all. If you do that, material nature understand is already actually doing what he's supposed to do. I don't need to. This is actually explained in the 7th chapter. You can find the shloka called Devi Esha Gunamaya Mama Maya Dhruteya Mameve Prapadyante Maya Metam Tarantite. It says that my divine nature is very, very difficult to overcome, Arjuna. But those who are surrendered unto me, they don't need to worry about this because I'll actually take care of material nature. I control material nature. Maya Dakshana Prakriti Suyate Sacharacharam. So it is all there in the Bhagavad Gita. When you actually read shloka by shloka, please read it shloka by shloka. You will start getting into, you'll get so much of instruction that you don't need all this so-called people, intellectual speakers giving you motivational talk. You don't need any of these do's and don'ts because Krishna already is there within our heart. He's already guiding us. Only thing is you have to actually hear from him, from what he's talking to us directly. Don't actually try to hear from somebody who is actually unauthorized. When I say unauthorized, who is not coming in the parampara. First of all, question you have to ask is if somebody is speaking, who is that person's spiritual master? Where is he getting this knowledge from? If he's actually getting it from the Shastras directly, then such a thing actually is not correct because again, they will misinterpret it. If do they have a spiritual master? Then yes. Whose spiritual master? See the parampara, where are they coming from? Then whatever information they are giving, then that they'll have some sense. Otherwise, it'll be just mental speculation, and those things may work, may not work. For some time, it may work, but end of the day, it will not actually take you to the perfection of life. We can be happy here in this world, balancing. Again, punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam. Again, next lifetime, you have to actually take a body, and maybe the same body you might get. Again, you have to balance this. Instead of that, Krishna is telling that leave everything here. Come back to me. I will take care of everything. Why are you so worried about balancing the facts and things like that? I will take care of it. I will do everything it's required. Just like I'll give you practical examples, okay, which happened to me in my life actually. Again, I'm not expecting this will happen for everyone, but I just want to give this because this particular subject about balancing material life and spiritual life came. I'm taking a car and going, and suddenly actually I have a flat tire, right? This flat tire, was it in plan? It actually under the control of the material nature. I did not create a flat tire. I did not do anything that actually create a flat tire. I don't even know that. But the Supreme Lord has control over everything. So for the flat tire, I had to actually spend 3 hours to get the tire okay and then go. That 3 hours I could actually spend in something else which is fruitful, right? So this is completely under the control of the Lord. He can actually do anything he wants. Or if we actually take shelter of the material nature will create more and more problems for us. So we don't need that. That's what I'm trying to say, right? Yeah, so keep attending these sessions, chant the holy name of the Lord, chant the Hare Krishna mantra, the Hare Krishna Maha mantra. We'll teach that in the last session. Chant the Hare Krishna mantra, not to actually balance life here, but to please the Supreme Lord. Do with that intention to actually go back to the Supreme Lord. When you do that with that intention, the material nature becomes completely quiet. She will not actually disturb us at all. But as long as we are trying to do things on our own with our own intelligence, then this is actually the trick that the Lord tells us. He says, don't even lose your intelligence. Wow, this is amazing. He says, Tasmat Sarveshu Kaleshu Mam Anusmara Yudhyacha Mai Arpita Mano Buddhir. Mind and intelligence give to me. He's saying to Arjuna, Mai Arpita Mano Buddhir Mam Evesha Samjaya. You will come back to me, Arjuna. Fight, but dedicate your mind and intelligence to me. So this is actually a very, very different thing. It's there in the Bhagavad Gita. I'm not actually giving my own opinion on these things. Krishna tells Arjuna saying that Mai Arpita Mano Buddhir. Mano means mind and Buddhi means intelligence. He's saying that both of them give to me. You don't think what you want to do is correct. I will tell what you need to do. You do that and automatically everything will be taken care. And one day we have to leave this body anyways, and then you go back to the Supreme Lord. Why you actually come back here and then do something which is, why have a problem at all? Why are you creating a problem at all, first of all? Why create the problem? The problem itself won't exist when you actually are focusing on the Supreme Lord. That's actually the explanation Prabhupada gives, saying that worship the father, mother will be quiet. fight with the father, mother will create torture. This is actually the real understanding one should actually keep in mind. First of all, you should understand who is the father, worship the father. Krishna tells, I am the father. There are so many verses we'll actually understand in Bhagavad Gita. Open the Bhagavad Gita, pick up anything, read one of the shlokas, you will understand like, oh wow, this is important for me to understand. Like that. Yeah. Okay, I think I've taken a lot of time. Sorry for that. Just going in the flow. Anybody has any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we could actually stop here. Is that okay, Ashwini Mataji?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, you could actually stop the recording for now.
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much.